Hi LEGO fans, let's talk about buildable figures. I've not reviewed these in the past, mainly because I don't find them very exciting. I bought this Sergeant Jin Urso months ago and she's still in the box. But now LEGO are starting to produce more classic characters which are definitely more appealing to an adult audience. I mean, it's Boba Fett! But he's for another day. I just find these human characters a little bit creepy. Buildable figures are nothing new. Here's an example from my collection. This is King Matthias from Knight's Kingdom, set number 8796, which was released in 2005. But winding the clock forward 12 years or so, LEGO have made some great advances in the design of buildable figures. And we have some much more exciting models to choose from, including the range of Star Wars buildable figures. This is the kind of set that really appeals to me. So today, I'm going to unbox, speed build and review set number 75532 Scout Trooper and Speeder Bike from LEGO Star Wars. I grew up in the Return of the Jedi era and had a lot of the original Kenner toys, including Scout Troopers and a Speeder Bike. So this is very nostalgic and it actually looks really good. The one thing I don't like about this set is the price. This is $55 for a 452-piece set. That's expensive and I can't help but feel this is being marketed at adult fans of LEGO with deeper pockets. But hey, I bought it, so let's get on with the review. Effectively, we're getting two models here. We've got the Scout Trooper and the Speeder Bike. The Scout Trooper stands 9.2 inches high and the Speeder Bike is almost 17 inches long. So this might actually be more impressive than I expect. We've got some interactive features with movable flaps at the rear and a missile that fires at the front. There's even a convenient place on the Scout Trooper to mount his blaster. So we've got a very cool looking set here, but is it worth the $55 price tag? To answer that question, we need to start by opening up the box. Here's everything that came inside the box. We've got 3 numbered bags of LEGO, 2 unusual pylon type pieces which should make up the front of the speeder, the disembodied head of the Scout Trooper, 2 instruction manuals and a dreaded sticker sheet. I'm going to go ahead and put the Scout Trooper and Speeder Bike together, and today this is going to be a 90-second speed build. And here's a completed speeder bike being ridden by the Scout Trooper. This took me just over an hour to put together, in fact 67 minutes. And the end result is much bigger and much more impressive than I anticipated. In fact, this thing is very, very good indeed. To give you a sense of scale, here's a Scout Trooper minifigure from the Ewok Village set. As you can see, this thing is considerably bigger. Now obviously this is a very impressive display piece, but it does have a couple of tricks up its sleeve, so let's zoom in a little bit closer and have a look at all of the detail on the build. First of all, let's take a look at the Speeder Bike. I had the Kenner version of this back in the 1980s. It was cheap and nasty, but it was a Star Wars toy. And Star Wars toys in the 1980s were the coolest thing in the world. I'll try not to draw too many unfair comparisons to the Kenner Speeder Bike, but please forgive me if I do. At the base, you'll notice we've actually got 2 pairs of legs. There's a fairly flimsy pair hanging down from the rear, and this much more sturdy stand that connects to the middle of the speeder. This main stand in the middle is is what holds up the weight of the speeder and the buildable figure. The legs at the back are the actual legs of the speeder, but these are really flimsy, and these connect to the feet of the Scout Trooper. One thing that was super cool about the Kenner speeder bike from the 1980s was the speed flaps. We do have speed flaps on this model, but it's a much more manual affair to deploy them. The 1980s model I used to play with had speed flaps connected to the legs. The speeder bike would actually sit on the legs, and then as you lifted up the speeder bike, the speed flaps would deploy. But overall this looks a million times better. Underneath the speed flaps we've got a pair of booster engines which provide the speeder bike with propulsion. The fundamental construction of the speeder is quite similar to a regular motorbike. We've got a sturdy frame and fairing covering the machinery. There's a slightly complicated and fiddly to build section of pipework which I think leads to an air intake. I'm no expert in speeder bike mechanics, but it does look like this is feeding air to the engines at the back. Those engines are housed in a rigid frame underneath the speeder, just behind the rider. There isn't much of a seat on a speeder bike, it doesn't look very comfortable, but there are a couple of handles for control. And those blue elements come in very handy for attaching the Scout Trooper's hands to the control levers. Here's a top-down view, and as you can see there's relatively little instrumentation on the speeder bike. What we do have unfortunately comes in the form of a stickered tile on top of the bike, but there is a very nice curved element making up the fairing at the front of the speeder. On the underside is a gun, it does shoot, and I'll come back to that in about 30 seconds. Projecting from the front of the speeder we've got a couple of grey pylons which attach to some fins on the front. If my memory of the Return of the Jedi serves me well, these are really important for keeping the speeder bike stable during flight. I seem to recall one of the speeder bikes lost this portion at the front, and it put the speeder bike into a terminal spin. Again, my knowledge of speeder bike construction isn't perfect, but it looks like we've got a blaster at the front. And while we're on the subject of weaponry, let's take a look at that laser cannon mounted underneath. It shoots these red projectiles which are notched to help it lock into place. There's also a convenient holder for the spare on the base. Loading the laser cannon is very easy, you just push the projectile into the end and it locks with an audible click. The laser cannon can then be fired using this rather sensitive trigger mounted underneath. The great thing about the design of that trigger is that you can pick up the whole speeder bike and fire the laser cannon as though the speeder bike was a gun. And just because, it's time for some gratuitous slow-mo. So the speeder bike is impressive, most impressive. But what about the Scout Trooper? Will the force be strong in this one, or will we find his lack of build detail disturbing? Let's take a look. I don't have an individual part count for the Scout Trooper, but if it's anything like Boba Fett, he's going to have about 140 pieces. So a good chunk of the part count is actually in the speeder bike. Standing next to the speeder bike or even riding on top, the Scout Trooper looks in good scale. In keeping with other buildable figures, there are many points of articulation in the Scout Trooper. Without wanting to break into an impromptu rendition of Dem Bones, here's a quick rundown. Starting at the top, the head is on a ball joint, so you can pose it in pretty much any direction you want to. You can even go full Exorcist if you wish. There are also ball joints at the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. The Scout Trooper also has a full range of movement in the legs, including ball jointed hips, knees, and ankles. So pretty much like a normal human being really. The head is one complete assembly, and apart from looking a little bit like the bad guy from Scream, it's a very good representation of a Scout Trooper. The shoulder joints, like many others, are covered in armour plating, but these do have a nasty habit of popping off when you're trying to pose the figure. There's a large printed plate making up the chest and torso, and some flaps on the side which help to cover up the hip joints when the Scout Trooper is sat on the speeder bike. There's slightly less detail on the back with no printing, and that hump does look slightly awkward. The hands are pretty basic with no articulation in the fingers, but these can grasp Technic axles. Here's the Scout Trooper's blaster. This is actually made up of several Technic Lego elements rather than being one complete moulded assembly. This fits quite neatly into the Scout Trooper's hand, and can also be holstered by mounting it on the knee, which is particularly useful when the Scout Trooper is riding the speeder bike. And that's where the value in this set really lies. As a standalone thing, he's no more than an action figure. But sitting him on board this speeder bike adds a whole new dimension. As separate builds, this Scout Trooper and speeder bike are pretty underwhelming, but bring them together and they are magnificent. Posing the Scout Trooper on the bike is a little bit fiddly and takes some time to get just right, but when you do, it looks great. It really helps that there are elements to attach the hands to the handlebars and the base of the feet to the pedals. And all of that posability in the Scout Trooper makes it very easy to display this and make it look good from pretty much any angle. This is probably not going to appeal to every LEGO fan, particularly the purists who feel that LEGO models should be made out of bricks. I myself was very skeptious, but I'm really impressed with the end result here. And I think this can also appeal to people who love Star Wars but aren't necessarily fans of LEGO. And that working laser cannon is a neat addition and sure to appeal to younger builders. So in conclusion, I really like this buildable figures set, but I think it's because the Scout Trooper has been paired with a vehicle, and I'm not sure how many more examples of that you can find within the Star Wars universe. Am I a buildable figures convert? I'll let you know when I've built Boba Fett. Would I recommend you go out and buy this? If you're the kind of person who grew up in the 1980s playing with traditional Star Wars toys, definitely yes. If you're a Star Wars fan, definitely yes. Or if you're looking for a cool action figure to play with and you don't mind the body armor falling off from time to time, then it's a good buy. But ultimately it's not really LEGO, is it? It's just a cool modular build, and that's okay. I hope you enjoyed today's unboxing, speed build and review video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe for more awesome LEGO content. I release 2 new LEGO review videos every single week, and you'll find an ever-growing back catalogue of content on my channel. Thanks for joining me today, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next build video.